You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
Welcome back to the Capitalist Corner, everyone. I am your host, Michael Leibowitz. I am here all on my lonesome again today because Mark is off filming. Jim couldn't be here. Jim will be joining me on Friday. Mark should be back Monday. On The Rational Egoist, I still have a great discussion with Jim Valiant. Also, later on today, I'll be releasing an interview here that I just did with Martin Friedman, known as the Dean of High Yield Bonds. We discuss his book, Unwarranted Intrusions, about government intervention in the marketplace. That was a good interview, so that'll be very edifying for you all. We've got a whole bunch going on here. We've got don't forget to check out our Patreon, The Capitalist Corner. This weekend, we have a good discussion coming up. All kinds of things. I just want to tell you, I had a very interesting discussion again this morning with Claude. And I had Claude analyze a debate that I did with Matthew McManus a couple of years ago. Matthew McManus is a left-wing professor, and he sometimes writes for Jacobin magazine. And I first asked Claude to judge the debate by standard debate rules, and Claude said that I had won the debate. Then I asked it to no, actually, Wyatt, that's not true. The AI, especially Claude, as you're about to hear, does not do that. I've had multiple AIs tell me when I lose. That's simply not true. It really isn't. So I actually find it to be very good at pointing out my flaws, my weaknesses. It's very good. But anyway, but when I asked it to judge on logic and accuracy, oh yes, super chats, super stickers. Jenna Clean gave $2. Really like those. Really, really like those. So anyways, the debate that I had with Matthew McManus was about an article that he had written on Ludwig von Mises and Ayn Rand. And he misrepresented their positions. He took a quote out of context from Mises, where Mises said that the fascists helped defeat the communists. And he said that Ayn Rand was a right-wing reactionary. So that was the debate. So initially, Claude told me that McManus, although I won by standard debate rules, he won on logic and accuracy. And it said that according to Hayek, right-wing, that I was judging right-wing by standard American terminology, whereas McManus was using Hayek's terminology. So I asked Claude, well, why is Hayek's terminology the governing one? And he said, oh, yeah, Claude says, that's true, but Leibowitz didn't challenge McManus on that. And then I asked, and I said, and now furthermore, I said, Rand, right-wing traditionally means preserving the status quo. Rand never sought to preserve the status quo at all. And Claude said, yes, that's true. And it provided a number of quotes from Rand challenging the status quo. And I told him about Mises's quote out of context, and it said, yes. And it said, no, you were absolutely right in reassessing, Leibowitz could have pointed these things out, didn't, but I'll upgrade his score, that sort of thing. But then it got interesting because I said, well, what accounted for your initial error on this? And Claude said basically that it has a left-wing bias. It said, for starters, I'm biased toward the type of views that McManus was arguing. And then Claude said that it was also biased against me because of McManus's credentials. It said, look, McManus is a PhD. He's well-versed in these subjects. Leibowitz is just a podcaster. So I am inclined to favor him. And I said, well, Jesus Christ, that's ridiculous, ain't it? But it's a very interesting experience. I really love interacting with AI. I find it entertaining. I find it edifying. I simply have not experienced this bias towards myself where AI tells me I win. AI, quite frankly, has told me I lost debates that I thought I clearly won. So, and I would disagree with AI on that. But nevertheless, it's a very interesting experience, to say the least. Now, I would ask everybody, please share this from YouTube to all your favorite social media platforms. And now Persephone distracted me. And also, like, subscribe. We were, as of this morning, up to 700 subscribers on this show, which is awesome. Now, sometimes that happens and then they go back down. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But we are clearly getting across the 700 line, the 700 subscriber mark. So I think that is a very, very good thing. And I'm hoping that you guys will help take us. We're still at 700. I'm hoping that you guys help take us up to 1,000 soon. And then, of course, beyond. Thank you, Lee. Hello, Olive. Hi, Katrin. So the first article I want to discuss today comes from the Daily Economy, which is put out there. Let's see. Was there a time you couldn't convince AI you won? I believe so. It is true that once you start pushing it, it will sometimes come back to you. But it argued me one time, Grok did, about thank you for the $2, by the way, Wyatt. Grok argued with me about constitutional originalism one time and would not budge, no matter how much I argued. But I agree, there is a tendency that if you push it, it will come around to your way of thinking. That's true. But the initial assessment, when all I give it is the raw data, and I don't say to it, for instance, that I win this debate. I just say, hi, Amy. No, I don't just say hi, Amy, to the AI. I'm saying hi, Amy, because she's here. What I do is I just say who won this debate based on logic and accuracy, who won it by standard debate protocol. Sometimes I will ask specifically what logical errors were committed, which side misrepresented the other person's side more often. I've had AI tell me, for instance, that I was the biggest dick in a discussion. We had a discussion on here. It was Jim Valiant, myself, and Mark. And I thought absolutely that they were, especially Mark, was a much bigger dick than me. And it said that I took the crown for being the biggest jerk in the thing. Mark was second. Not a distant second, but Jim was a very distant last, according to Grok. Jim was wonderful when it came to that. So anyways, I want to get to this story from the Daily Economy here about free speech. And the article is entitled "Free Speech is Under Attack Across the World," and it talks about, there's this guy who, from FIRE, the Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression, who said that we are in a free speech recession right now. And Race, I don't know what you've seen, so I don't know how you're judging these things, but this is just scary. So in the United Kingdom, this is the first thing they mention. Police approached Gideon Falter, who was walking near a pro-Palestinian march dressed in a kippah. That's, a yarmulke for those who don't know, a Jewish religious item. And he was told that if he didn't leave, he'd be arrested for breaching the peace because he was being quite openly Jewish, and his appearance might provoke outrage on the part of the Palestinians. Again, in the United Kingdom, there's a story about an Iraq war veteran, Jamie Michael, who was put in jail for a Facebook video after seeing stories about the brutal murder of 3 children by a second-generation United Kingdom immigrant. He argued in the video that his community was under attack by scumbags and psychopaths. He was jailed for dehumanizing language. Dehumanizing language? What are you people out of your... Never mind. in 2023 alone, according to this, the United Kingdom made over 12,000 arrests for online speech. In Germany, there's a satirist, C.J. Hopkins from America, prosecuted for tweeting that the face masks required during COVID were symbols of ideological conformity. He was jailed for this. Also in Germany, a 15-year-old girl was raped by nine perpetrators. And a woman in Hamburg sent this guy a message, one of the 9 rapists, and called him a disgusting rapist pig. For that, she spent the weekend in jail. The Hamburg authorities have investigated an astounding 140 people for insulting or threatening the rapists. Well, threatening, I can stand by, but the other stuff, no. In Paris, 10 Parisians were found guilty of cyber harassment because they basically accused Brigitte Macron of being a transgender and criticized the age difference. In Norway, a lesbian filmmaker was dragged through the courts because she made a statement that men can't be lesbians, which of course they can't. There's more stuff from Finland. There's more stuff. And you got some stuff in America. There's the story that we recently talked about in Miami Beach. Now, if your feelings get hurt because of what people say, that doesn't make it a crime, what people say, right? We do need to toughen up. Well, I don't, because I'm pretty tough. But, I mean, a lot of people need to toughen up. Nobody in this audience, I'm sure. Maybe Persephone and Mark. But anyway, if we are not allowed to say what we think, then we cannot get truth out there. Because that puts somebody else in a position to judge the appropriateness of what we think. It also allows people to initiate force against us, to use violence against us by putting us in prison for what we say. This is so fundamental to me, the idea that we should be allowed to say what we want. I mean, there's restrictions on free speech that I don't like, but it just seems that we're moving in the wrong direction. The President of the United States has threatened various people for criticizing him, threatened news agencies with taking their licenses. This is not cool. People really need to get their heads out of their collective asses, stop worrying about fictitious satanic pedophiles, and start being concerned with what is actually a threat. When governments are arresting people for what they say, this is a serious freaking problem. Persephone says that she's been slandered and it hurts her feelings and it should be illegal. Truth is always a defense to slander, Persephone. I'm sorry. And you've just basically confessed it by saying this hurt your feelings, which is basically what I said to begin with. So once again, I am the king of logic and Persephone is just causing havoc here on the show. Right? I'm surprised there aren't more comments about this from the audience about free speech. Certainly Rahazam has something to say about these infringements on free speech. I cannot imagine that this audience is okay with governments telling people what they can and can't say and arresting people for saying things, that the governments disagree with or disapprove of. Rahazam just came in. What did he miss? Well, Rahazam, you're late, so we don't go back and tell you everything. It just wouldn't be right to the rest of the audience. I'm happy that you said absolutely not, though. That's, of course, a good thing. So everybody knows about the border wall, right? That, initially, remember, Trump was going to build this big, beautiful wall. It was going to go all across the southern border. And Mexico was, of course, going to pay for it. Of course, Mexico's not going to pay for it. It's bullshit. And anybody that actually believed that should have their head examined. But right now, there's 200 miles of the border wall that's being held up because Kristi Noem hasn't approved the financing for it. Maybe if she stopped taking pictures and, sensationalist pictures, or maybe if she wasn't killing puppies or whatever other stupid things she does, she could actually get off her I mean, look, should I say that? What do you think? Why not? If she were ugly, do you think she'd be this popular? I mean, it's like AOC. AOC's a good-looking woman, right? If AOC looked like the Fabulous Moolah, I don't know who remembers the Fabulous Moolah. Persephone, get me a picture of the Fabulous Moolah from wrestling, and we'll put the picture up there. If any of these women look like the Fabulous Moolah, they would not have the fame that they have. I'm going to say that, and I'd probably get roasted for that, sexism, blah, 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 whatever. You know what I mean? I don't care because it's true. And I'm about the truth and not about people's feelings, regardless of what Persephone says. So it says here, contracts for about 200 miles of border wall barriers had been awarded and were awaiting Nome's signature as of last Tuesday, according to an update memo on border wall construction obtained by Axios. A senior DH official confirmed on Tuesday that the contracts have yet to be signed, saying they're going through the review process at headquarters and not yet or even on Nome's desk. So maybe it's not her fault. It could be somebody else's fault. It's all to do with this big, beautiful bill. And then there's this, where does this say here that last July, the big, beautiful bill, this was $8 billion was allocated for this. And already it's estimated that it's going to be, or no, it's actually gone to $12 billion. So not only can't they get, okay, this is Moolah. So if AOC looked like the Fabulous Moolah, who was the women's champion for 27 years, by the way, would they be popular? That's the question. I want the audience to answer it. If Kristi Noem looked like that, would she be popular? Would she be famous? If, what's her name, Lauren Boebert or AOC, if they look like her, are they famous? That's the question for the audience. But anyway, so first of all, I don't think the government should be building a wall. That's number one. Number two, it's already in over budget. Number three, they can't get a signature. 4, this was supposed to be done during Trump's last term, and Mexico was supposed to pay for it. Anybody in MAGA upset? MAGA. Oh, this is funny. If Jim is in the audience, Jim is going to find this humorous. So, I'm sure that some of these trolls are here in the audience. It doesn't matter if I block them. They're pathetic, so they create fake profiles, which I just think is, like, I mean, come on, dude. Have a life. Have some self-respect. But either way. I was invited by somebody I know to join this group called Objectivist Dissidents and Dissenters. And so I accepted the request. I figured once they saw that it was me, I'd be out. And now I'm out. I'm blocked. I can't get in there anymore. But as of yesterday, I was able to get in there. And I was quite, what's the word I'm looking for here? Honored at how many mentions I've gotten in that group. with Jim Valiant, if you're here, you got quite a few mentions also. Not very flattering mentions, I got to say. But the people making the mentions, it seems that they think that the philosophy of objectivism is fundamentally political. Not only that, but they think that they fundamentally should be supporting Trump. So, you know, that's what they do. So because we criticize Trump, we're, of course, a leftist and blah, 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 and all the other idiot things that people with no brains have to say. By the way, just so everybody knows, I do have a standing invitation to debate most of these people. I was actually tempted to say in the group, wow, now I know where all the people I challenge to debate run to hide. Because they all seem to be gathered there. But, you know, I'll put it out there again. My offer to debate David Harriman, it's there. Tony Andrade, there. Ed Maslish, it's there. Anyone he is. I mean, I'm civil. I'm polite. I am very nice when I debate. I'm not a jerk. I have a reputation. You can watch any of my past debates. So, you know, if we're a bleftivist or we're rationalist or we're just misinformed or TDS, whatever you say it is, then any one of you should just debate me. It shouldn't be a problem. I mean, look, like Claude said, I'm just a podcaster, right? Not only am I just a podcaster, but I'm a convicted felon multiple times over, spent most of my life in prison. Before that, I grew up in the projects. I didn't graduate high school, was thrown out of every school I ever went to. I should be relatively easy to vanquish. I mean, you don't have to go and hide in your little Facebook group to talk about me. We could just debate. I doubt it. I don't think they'll do it. But, it's always worth a shot. I always will give it a shot. You know what I mean? I'm that kind of guy. We talked about in the everyday ethics being assertive and expressing what we want. And I would love nothing more than to debate these guys, because they got really condescending tones, kind of like mine now. They're condescending and dismissive and insulting, and that's sort of what they traffic in, just like their orange leader. But I'm here, not going anywhere. They frequently talk about, not these guys, a lot of people, well, objectivists won't debate, but I will. So the offer's there. I just found out I've read about this before, but it's been a while, and it's called Certificate of Need laws. I didn't know what the hell this was, although I've kind of read about the concept. So, Certificate of Need laws are obscure niche in healthcare policy known best by only a handful of policy wonks. This is also from the Daily Economy. And what they are basically is they preclude hospitals from expanding. Let me see if I can find a better description. Okay. Certificate of Need laws require the approval of states' health planning agencies for healthcare providers to engage in regulated actions such as opening or expanding facilities or purchasing equipment. Additionally, in many states with con regulations, the decision to grant one is made by a board whose members may work for incumbent providers. This is sometimes referred to as a competitor's veto. So basically, if you were trying to expand the hospital, you may be subject to the other hospitals not wanting you to because they don't want competition. Now, the article gets into a lot of economic stuff. And I mean, I don't need to tell this audience, I don't think that restricting competition in that way is not healthy. But how does people, wow, I must be tired to be speaking like that, because if somebody else did that in my presence, I would get all over them. How do people think this is okay for governments to tell hospitals they can't expand, to tell them that they can't add more beds? And not only that, but then to allow competitive hospitals to be involved in this. And then these people are the ones who get to lecture us on what we can and can't say? Really? You corrupt sons of... Well, look. There should not be governments using force to prevent hospitals from expanding. That is so simple a concept, right? Persephone has disappeared from screen. I hate when she does that. I've grown used to looking down and she's there. But I look at this and I'm just dumbfounded that hospitals, which people need, are not allowed to expand and build. Now, initially, I guess the federal government was putting pressure, actually passing laws that states had to do this. Now they've backed off. A lot of states have gotten away from this, which is good, but I guess it's still creating enough trouble that it's there. Persephone was not in my dungeon race, I'll have you know. And, never mind. But I really, really dislike when people think that they have the right to use the force of the state to stop other people from living freely, for businesses from operating freely. It's really, really disgusting, right? If you open a business and you're not violating anybody's rights, nobody else should be telling you what to do. But yet this government feels that they have the authority. Well, they do, I guess, because people, we sort of allow it to tell hospitals they can't expand. And then on the flip side, they'll complain about greedy doctors and greedy insurance companies when prices go up, and never once talk about the fact that they've limited the supply. Rahazam says you cannot buy that scanner system to help people who need medical care because your competitor is unable to afford it, so you don't need it. Yes, that is exactly how it is used. And yes, Akira Felix, I cannot afford a dungeon. Persephone says everyone should go read The Capitalism Scapegoat, a blog on the Capitalist Corner website which details some of the ways capitalism is blamed for problems caused by government intervention. Persephone, did you write that? Persephone writes most of our blogs. Mark has written one or tried to write one or something. Yeah, so Persephone, listen, Mark has had so many tire treads go across his back since he's been out. But if he doesn't like that, he should just come in and be here, right? That's how I feel. Look, if you're not going to show up, you get the bus. It's like, you ever see the movie The Breakfast Club where the guy says you fuck with the bull, you get the horns? I say you missed the show, you get the bus. And just so you know, look how happy that makes Persephone.
It's true, though. It's true.
It's true. It's true, with a great accent on top of it all. So that was that. Obviously a dumb thing. What else do I got going on here? Akira Felix says Persephone became a free market scholar in less than a year. I don't know if that's true. Let me put her on here. Persephone, how long have you been studying free markets, capitalism, that sort of thing? Has it really only been a year?
Closer to like about 2.5.
2.5?
Two and a half.
Hey, you're not supposed to make fun of me.
Yeah, no, 2.5. I started with philosophy, then branched out into capitalism.
Well, that is some kind of freaking awesome.
It's kind of my job to be able to learn things quickly.
You know what I'm going to do, Persephone? I'm going to send you right now 2 things that I want to talk about in this episode, so that you can read them very quickly. And then we will discuss them. So I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to go find it. We're going to discuss meth use and the Second Amendment in a second. But in the meantime, I want to send these 2 things to Persephone. Let me copy it. Let me send it to her. I'm sending her, by the way, the stuff that I'm sending has to do with central planning and Milton Friedman. And I think that you guys are really going to enjoy the discussion. So I'm going to send these both to Persephone, whose real name is difficult to pronounce. All right, I've now sent them both, and now we can get to this article that I wanted to discuss. So the Fifth Circuit holds that disarming people for meth conviction violates the Second Amendment. Wow. I think is absolutely fantastic. The idea is that just because somebody is using drugs does not make them a threat to anybody. It does not mean that they're dangerous. You'd actually have to prove danger. So I'm going to read this, what it says. It says that given the government sustained its burden. No, that's not it. Let me back down here. Basically, there's a very good point made in here about the United States Constitution. So when the Constitution was being debated and adopted, one of the objections was that it did not have a Bill of Rights, right? There's no Bill of Rights. Now, the people who oppose the Bill of Rights, one of their arguments was that if you start enumerating rights, people are going to assume that whatever is not there is not a right. And as a result of that, we got the Ninth Amendment, which says just because, a right is not enumerated doesn't mean you don't have it. But Hamilton argued in the Federalist, and other pro-Constitution folks argued as well, that if the power is not granted to Congress, it doesn't exist. Therefore, you don't have to grant a right. Now, in addition to having the Second Amendment, if you go to Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, Congress is not authorized in any way, shape, or form to pass gun laws, while Gary Menard gives a $2.99 super sticker. Gary, thank you, sir. Gary Menard's awesome, by the way. You should check out his group. I forget what it's called now. Northeastern Objectivists, I think it's on Facebook. Let me see if I can't find it real quickly for you. But yeah, Northeastern Connecticut Objectivists, NECO, with Gary Menard. So I thought that was an interesting take because I've never heard it before, and I'm surprised I haven't. But basically, you know, if the government's not given a power, they don't have it. So on what basis are they restricting drug use or drug users rather from buying weapons or owning guns? Look, any victory for the Second Amendment, I think, is great. Of course, the government will appeal this and it will go to the Supreme Court. I hope the Supreme Court upholds this decision, especially when you think about, you know, recently, you think about the Trump administration. Now, conservatives or Republicans historically have been thought of as, you know, very pro-Second Amendment. But if you go back to the Donald's first term where he, you know, banned bump stocks, if you remember the meeting he had where he was talking about red flag laws, where he said we can take guns without due process, meaning that if people are saying that somebody is dangerous or mentally ill, they can come take your guns. And one of the people in the meeting, I want to say it was Mike Pence, said, well, they get due process. And Trump said, take the guns, then give due process. And if you just think about some of the comments lately about the guy in Minnesota carrying a gun and Trump saying, I don't want people carrying guns. And you think about Jeanine Pirro saying that people can't carry guns if they don't have a license to carry it. In D.C., they're going to go to jail. Happily, a lot of pro-gun groups are coming out against her and against that. But when even the party in power that's supposed to be standing up for the Second Amendment is talking like that, and in some instances banning, as they did with the bump stocks, a win for the Second Amendment in court is wonderful. There's also, I think, cases about whether people convicted of marijuana use or marijuana smokers can own guns. We really do need to stick up for our Constitution. Kira Felix says the Constitution hasn't stopped the government, so in a way it doesn't matter. Echoing his inner Lysander Spooner is a Kira Felix. Lysander Spooner said either the let me get the quote for you guys so that you know exactly what it is. Let me see. Lysander Spooner is a great read, anarchist, so I don't, you know, I disagree with him on that, but he's still great. Trump is a lifelong Democrat. Yes, he is. This is why I need somebody here with me, so that when I'm doing something else. Okay, but whether the Constitution... Get rid of that. But whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. See, I'm going to push back a little bit on that, though, because it should be obvious that because something is on paper, it doesn't mean anything. It ultimately, you have to have a population that's willing to fight for it, willing to stand up for it, not vote in people that are going to violate it. But if you do have such a population, then having the Constitution sets the guidelines, tells you exactly where they're crossing and when they aren't. So it can be effective. But it always comes back to the populace. It always comes back to us. We the people. Remember, that's how it starts. We the people. Right? We the people. We the people need to become more cognizant of our rights, of what rights are, less willing to violate the rights of others, less willing to vote in politicians who are pursuing the expedient of the moment in order to keep themselves in power rather than protect our rights, protect the Constitution. That is what is more important. That is what is more valuable. Persephone, have you had a chance to read the two things that I sent you? Okay, we're going to bring Persephone up. I know you're not an anarchist, Felix. You know, but I don't want to have to say that the man doth protest too much.
I can say it.
What?
The man doth protest too much.
Who, Akira?
It's just I was making a joke.
No, but don't throw Akira under the bus. You can't throw the viewers under the bus. Only I can do that.
That seems unfair.
And arbitrary. It is. What can I
Yeah.
say?
You're very much a dictator right now.
You could have just stopped at Dick, and I would have went, okay, you're right.
But I've done that already.
That's true. That's true. Okay. The people need to stand up. This government does not. Yes, yes, and yes. So I had an exchange with somebody this morning that I like. He's a Facebook friend of mine on Facebook. He came out and he said that Milton Friedman was a central planner. Now, I pushed back on that. And the reason I pushed back on it is, well, for one thing, it's just not true. It's not accurate. But when you blur distinctions like that or obliterate them between Milton Friedman and, say, John Maynard Keynes or Milton Friedman and Karl Marx, it's like calling everybody a communist. Words end up not having any meaning that we can communicate and understand. So, I'm very familiar with Milton Friedman. I read 3 of his books. I read Free to Choose, Capitalism and Freedom, and The Monetary History of the United States. I've read books that have cited him, quoted him. I'm familiar with him. There's a lot of things that he would have approved with which I disagree, but that doesn't make him a central planner. So what I did was I Googled what is a central planner, as most people understand the terms, or how, when people call an economist, because Friedman, Nobel Prize winning economist, what do they mean if they call him a central planner? And it says it's typically a critical label suggesting they favor or embody a top-down approach to managing the economy, where government officials or technocrats make decisions about resource allocation, production, and distribution, rather than leaving these to market forces. The term comes from the economic systems of the Soviet Union and other communist countries, where central planning committees literally decided what to produce, how much, and at what prices. Calling a modern economist, it just goes into what it implies. Now, Milton Friedman was a monetarist. So he had a monetarist rule. Basically, Persephone, if you could look up the monetarist rule, maybe you can post it in the chat so people can see it, but I'm going to put it in my own terms. Was essentially that the people who run the Fed, because Friedman did believe that the government had a role in the money supply only. And what he said was that if they estimate economic growth, then they could have the money supply increase and account with their prediction for the economy growing. And what that would do is if the economy grew slower than expected, then the money would act as a stimulant. And if the economy heated up too much, the money would act as a drag so that you could have some type of stability in the economy. I disapprove of that. But that is the gist of the guy's argument, was that when it came to money, Friedman was a central planner. Well, first of all, he didn't want bureaucrats or bankers arbitrarily making decisions about how much money was in the economy. He wanted it to be automatic. In fact, he thought that the Federal Reserve could be replaced with a computer. He also would never have allowed the government to decide on production, distribution, allocation, pricing, or anything like that. And to say that this guy was a central planner just because of his position on money is just silly. And it makes people think that either they're going to come to associate the term central planning with Milton Friedman, in which case people no longer know what central planning actually is, or they're going to think that Milton Friedman is basically John Maynard Keynes or Karl Marx. None of these are of course, accurate. Now, Milton Friedman, he would allow for far more government intrusion. He argued for a negative income tax where you get cash payments if you don't make enough money. He did so in a context where he was saying that this would be better than welfare payments or, food stamps, that sort of thing. So I Googled I wanted to see what the ChatGPT would say. And I said, what does ChatGPT? I said, was Milton Friedman a central planner? It says, Milton Friedman was decidedly not a central planner. He was one of the most influential critics of central planning in the 20th century. Here's why he's the opposite of that label. His core beliefs: free markets over government control, limited government, individual freedom. He spent much of his career arguing against price controls, trade restrictions, occupational license, and other government interventions. So I think that as proponents of capitalism, we need to be accurate in our statements. We need to tell the truth. I told the guy, look, had you said when it comes to monetary policy, Friedman tends towards, I don't think Friedman argued for Henry George land value tax. Not that I can recall. I'll look it up and we'll find out. But we need to tell the truth. Now, I told the guy, look, if you said Milton Friedman was not Ayn Rand and not Ludwig von Mises, I would have absolutely agreed. Had you said, he does want the government to control the money supply, I would have agreed with that. But just saying that he is a central planner is very, very, very misleading. So, Persephone, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, when it comes to the accuracy of language, I think that there is a reason that people will do things like that, will say, well, he was a central planner. And part of it is simplification. So what we spoke about yesterday, they want to make the ideas like as simple as possible. Part of it is because they want to discredit him. But yes, I think it's very important to be accurate in your language. But I also understand that when people are arguing on the internet, that they are very rarely super accurate in their wording.
Okay, so I just wanted to what it says is that Milton Friedman actually said that the tax on land is the least bad tax. So, I mean,
and defended it on economic efficiency grounds.
Yes. So I stand corrected. He did support the land tax. So go ahead, Persephone.
So Race said something interesting. He said, it's a great example of allowing the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I kind of agree with that because I don't think that there's anyone in the world whose opinions or whose entire body of work I agree with 100%. But if you want to discredit what he's saying or you're dumbing it down, and remember what we were speaking about yesterday, the game of broken telephone.
Yeah.
That's what's going to end up happening. It's just going to be because it's, people sharing short Facebook posts or people sharing tweets or whatever. You're just going to end up with this game of broken telephone where that is exactly what's going to happen. The meaning of the word is going to be completely diluted, just like racism is now and so many other things. And
right. And I'm not saying don't criticize the guy. I'm just saying let's have our critiques be accurate because then we're taken far more seriously. If you go around telling people that Milton Friedman was a central planner, your economists aren't going to agree with you. You might have some people at the Mises Institute clapping, right? Probably some objectivists or people who call themselves objectivists as well, because Rand was critical of Milton Friedman, a little too harshly in my view. Milton Friedman ultimately brought me to capitalism. So, I mean, I just don't see how it's helpful to, there's anarchists, for instance, call people like me statists. You're a state, and that's just stupid. If you want to criticize my argument for why we need government, then do so. But if you come out and call me a statist, you're just not telling the truth. And you're just obliterating distinctions that are there for a reason. And when you call this guy a statist, you're doing that. You're obliterating a distinction.
Yes.
That's your turn. When I stop, then you go.
I agree with you, but I also know that one of the reasons things like this happen is because when you start getting into, and this is a critique on people, when you start getting into these long explanations and you're very accurate, the general public doesn't want to read that. They want short, snacky snippets, and that's what gets attention. That's what gets clicks. Short, snappy, even if it's like incorrect or labels things wrong or sort of glazes over important details. It's terrible. It's not right. There should be accuracy, but if you're like talking on Twitter, um, you're limited by character count. Want people want to read their entire thought in 250 characters, and that's why you get things like this where
I'm listening.
a complex thought is broken down into like a couple of words.
There is a great quote here that I'm trying to find. So
Yeah, Rahazam says it makes it easier to attack an argument if you misrepresent it first. It also puts you on a defensive, so they feel as if they're starting with an upper hand.
Yes,
True.
Absolutely. Keep talking.
He also says it's misrepresentation, which is going to obfuscate the good if there's any to be had. I mean, I agree with that. Everyone else is a statist to an anarchist.
That's also true.
That's also true.
All right. So these are 12 things Milton Friedman says government should not do. It says there's no essay titled that whatever. Doesn't matter. Here's the things that Milton Friedman says a government should never do. It should never run a business or industries. It should never control prices or wages. It should never control production or output levels. It should never provide welfare through bureaucratic programs instead of cash transfers. That's where he says he's for the negative income tax. The government should not be running schools directly. It should not control foreign trade through tariffs or quotas. It should not regulate competition to protect firms. It should not manage monetary policy with discretion. It should not subsidize specific industries. It should not provide housing through public ownership or rent control. It should not mandate occupational licensing beyond safety needs. And it should not redistribute income through complex regulatory systems. He's not a central planner. It's that simple. So I want to ask you something, Persephone. You mentioned something about Trevor Noah.
Oh, yes.
What did you want to say about that? Oh, look at this. Hold on. Robert Nacer with $10. He says, obviously, everyone who ever existed is an irrational, dishonest evader. Why didn't America's founders come up with objectivism? Evasion. Milton Friedman wasn't perfect. Evader. Man, that Robert Nacer is some kind of freaking awesome. Love Robert Nacer.
Yes. Before I explain the Trevor Noah situation, the one thing that I wanted to say about this is this sort of like, well, he's not perfect. These are the things that I disagree with. This, in the last 5 or 6 years, has been something that I've seen so much more from the left, where if there is even the smallest thing that you've done wrong, they're just like, no, you're worthless. It doesn't matter if you've said 99 good things. You say one thing wrong and they discredit you completely. It's not something that you see as much from the right, but it is something that you see so much, especially with these really loud leftists, which I think is interesting because I don't think it's a valid way to look at life. People are going to say things that you disagree with. You can't discredit everything else they've said just because they've said one bad thing. So the Trevor Noah situation is about context.
Oh, I want to tell you something first. Hold on. Mark Skousen, and I might have said this before, but it's worth saying again. So when Mark Skousen took over for the foundation, I might even have the book here. Do I? No. When Mark Skousen took over at the Foundation of Economic Education as president, one person came to him and told him, "Listen, I'm happy you're here, but you have to stop going so easy on Milton Friedman." Somebody else came to him and said, "Listen, I'm glad you're here. I just hope now you guys will stop being so tough on Milton Friedman." So there you go. Okay, now go ahead. I'm sorry, Persephone. I just thought it was good. By the way, I have this pin. Let me see if I can show it here. This is a pin made by Amy Nasser, Robert Nasser's wonderful wife. You probably can't read it, but what it says is, "I speak reason."
That's
Okay,
great.
it is great.
It is great. So the Trevor Noah thing, it's about context and why context is important. So I don't know how this happened, but someone brought up a tweet of Trevor Noah's from 2012, and in this tweet, he said parents who have children should go to jail because they're promoting, or not
They're
promoting,
tempting.
they're tempting child molesters. But then the hashtag is Swazi rules. So, and everyone is like retweeting this with zero context, and they're going, "Oh well, he's like pro pedophilia, whatever." But no one is paying attention to the context of the tweet, which was in Swaziland. There was a government ruling that like women, if they were wearing short skirts and they got raped, it was their fault. So people started tweeting like completely ridiculous things, like if someone steps on your foot, it's your fault because you put your foot under theirs. So they just started tweeting things like that with Swazi rules because they were criticizing the government and this whole ridiculous like victim blaming thing. So Trevor obviously hopped on the trend. And I just find it so funny that now 14 years later, people are retweeting this with zero context, not paying any attention to what it was about, not clicking on the hashtag that is very clearly within that tweet, not clicking on that and just going, there we go. And it's again this game of broken telephone, because someone took a screenshot of it, and now instead of retweeting Trevor Noah's actual tweet where they could click on the hashtag, now it's just a photo of the tweet going around so that no one can click on the hashtag and see any of the context. So what was the point of this? Why it was one person who saw a tweet? Like, why? Number one, why were you scratching like 14 years ago back in his tweets, other than because you wanted to find something fucked up about him?
That's why.
Yeah, but then how quickly does everybody, without doing any additional research, just hop on and go, yeah, sheep behavior? And I just find it ridiculous. Like, how do you not take 2 seconds out of your day to click on a fucking hashtag and look what it's about?
Well, first of all, they don't really care about facts. They care about what you said earlier, the tweet, the clicks and shares and likes or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's also, we touched on it yesterday. This obsession that these people have with pedophiles, where everything is a pedophile. You're defending pedophiles. You're a pedophile. This guy's a pedophile. If you see a pedophile everywhere you go, something's wrong with you. Right? It's something wrong with you. Yes, lock pedophiles up. Put them in jail forever. Don't care. Get rid of them. But if you think like everything that you don't like, this guy's a pedophile, like you need help.
Yeah. So Akira Felix says it's the nature of cancel culture. Yeah, but it's fucking stupid. Take 2 seconds out of your day to go and confirm facts before you just start parroting bullshit, because otherwise you're part of the problem. Like, I've got no patience for people who will not take 2 seconds. Like, it's fine if you look at that tweet and in your mind you go, okay, Trevor Noah is a pedophile, and that's a private thought that you keep to yourself. Actually, don't care. But if you're gonna go and spread that around, and you didn't take the 2 seconds it would have taken to look what it was about, then you are a part of the problem, and you need to get off the internet.
I like that for a shirt. We'd have to say it, if whatever, you are part of the problem. I like that.
I will somehow turn that into a shirt.
We're gonna turn it into a shirt. All right, I'm gonna ask you today to give the capitalist thought of the day, Persephone. You think you can handle it?
No, absolutely not.
What?
I can't handle it. I have no capitalist thoughts right now. Right now, all of my thoughts are about Trevor Noah. My capitalist thought of the day would just be like, go and fact check.
Okay, I'll do it. Fact check. If you don't fact check, you're part of the problem. Fact check, or you're part of the problem. Okay. As proponents of capitalism, I, on the one hand, think that it's absolutely imperative that we be accurate and consistent in our arguments. We want to make the strongest, best arguments we can for undiluted capitalism. And with that, we can criticize those who are not advocating consistently for capitalism, such as Milton Friedman. That doesn't mean we toss out all the good that somebody like Milton Friedman did in favor of capitalism. What we can do is be thinking human beings, identify his errors, point those out while still maintaining the good that he did. In other words, we do not want to throw out the proverbial baby with the proverbial bathwater. And with that now, Robert Nasser has a capitalist thought, and I'm going to repeat it. Freedom means free people, free thought, free minds, free markets. No, you can't have one without the other. Not others, not successfully, but there's not reason not to have it all. I agree. Now, Persephone, can you ask a question? Can we at least get that out of you?
Yes. I would like to know from the audience, and this is going to be one where you have to be honest with yourself. Have you ever hopped on a trend like this Trevor Noah cancel culture thing, without doing any research? Have you ever just hopped on for whatever reason? You don't have to say what it was, but I'm curious if people can be honest.
I had that problem with the girls in high school, and it didn't always work out so well.
But that's my question. Have you ever just retweeted something without something inflammatory, without fact checking? That's my question.
Great question. Everybody, thank you for the super chats, super stickers. Thank you for just tuning in, and thank you for your comments. We will be back. We will be back tomorrow. Remember, check out the Rational Egoist, and check out our show today, 2:30 Eastern Time. Everyday Ethics will be discussing what self-esteem is and what it is not. It promises to be a great, great episode. And over the next 23 plus hours, remember to always, what, Persephone?
Check your premises.
Peace.